This podcast is sponsored by the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is a catalyst for growth and prosperity and is here to protect and promote business, inspire innovation, cultivate communities, and influence action. Learn more at fmwfchamber.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of the Inform Business Beat podcast. This is your host, Thomas Evanella, and we are back from our Thanksgiving break, so let's get you caught up on all the latest business news from our area. Sporting goods retailer Scheels announced it will open its 34th all-sports store in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2024. The store will be nearly 250,000 square feet, and construction will begin after a full demolition of the existing building at the site. Currently, Scheels has 30 stores with 4 in development. In addition to the Tulsa location, new stores are planned for Chandler, Arizona, Wichita, Kansas, and Meridian, Idaho. Yet another taco shop in Fargo has closed. This time, it is the location at 420 University Drive North that closed Wednesday, November 23rd. Taco shop owner Troy Thompson said he was unable to comment on the closing. However, a sign posted at the location told customers to keep an eye out for a new location coming in 2023. Taco shop has scaled down its presence since Thompson took over as owner. Locations in downtown Fargo and near the NDSU campus have closed in the past few years. The only taco shop location currently open is at 1825 University Drive South. Taco shop has been in business in Fargo since 1961. Mi Barrio Dominican Cuisine has set up a permanent presence inside Fargo's Big Top Bingo. Mi Barrio serves Dominican favorites such as tres golpes and mofongo. The business was started in 2020 by Jessica Hernandez, a Dominican Republic native herself. Mi Barrio has grown slowly but surely since Hernandez first started the business. She began with a pop-up operation before upgrading to a food trailer and now her current location. Hernandez doesn't plan on stopping there either. Her ultimate dream is to own her own standalone restaurant offering all things Dominican. Trollwood Barbers in North Fargo is now under new ownership. Maureen Robinson is the new owner, having bought the shop from former owner Lori Ludlam this fall. Currently, Robinson is splitting her time between the Trollwood Barbers and Everett's Barbers in downtown Fargo, where she has worked since her sister opened there 10 years ago. For now, Robinson is open 2 days per week at Trollwood Barbers, which is the only barbershop in North Fargo. She eventually plans to open 4 days per week at the location. Stonetown Grill in West Fargo will mark its last day in business Sunday, December 4th. The restaurant is closing only 2 years after it opened amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in November 2020. Co-owner Jessica Large announced the closing via Facebook, saying that she and her husband have faced several hurdles since opening during the pandemic. Stonetown Grill isn't the only restaurant to have recently closed in the area surrounding Veterans Boulevard and 32nd Avenue South. Buffalo Wings and Rings also closed near the intersection earlier this year. 7 months after temporarily closing, the Fargo DIY Garage has reopened in a new location across the river in Moorhead. Owner Chris Partridge first opened the Fargo DIY Garage in June 2020 near 13th Avenue South in Fargo. The business offers do-it-yourselfers the space and tools necessary to conduct their own automotive repairs. Partridge had to temporarily close the location earlier this year, forcing him to search for a new space. He is now co-located with Mr. Mechanic at 2320 2nd Avenue North in Moorhead. In addition to all his previously available services, the new location also offers a tire mounting machine and close proximity to a professional mechanic. As for the business's name, Partridge says he plans to stick with the Fargo DIY Garage for now.
Stay connected to your community and save. Just 99 cents a month gets you 3 months of unlimited access to Inform.com. Visit Inform.com/subscribe and get your first 3 months of news for only 99 cents a month.
We have one last story we want to share with you this week, and it comes to us courtesy of Tammy Swift. Tammy recently reported on Beauty Mark's Boudoir, a boudoir photography business in Moorhead that's focused on body positivity. Tammy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Thomas.
Tell us about how you heard about Beauty Mark's Boudoir and who was behind the business.
Well, like a lot of things, I actually heard about it on Facebook. I don't know. I happened across a conversation where somebody was asking about who does boudoir photography, and Beauty Marks came up several different times. And so I'd never heard of them before, so I decided to pursue it. And so I called the owner, Tonya Olson, And Tonya told me her story. It was really interesting. She started it about 5 years ago, said she'd always been interested in photography, but didn't think it was something that she could go to school for. So she just, took a job after high school. And a few years later, she was thinking of doing a maternity photo shoot because she was pregnant with her second child. And just by researching other maternity photos, she realized how much she loved and missed photography. And so her dad and a friend bought her a camera because at the time she didn't have a lot of money. She was a mom with two small children. And she just basically taught herself how to shoot photos. And how she got into boudoir photography is kind of by accident. She had recruited a couple of friends to model for what she kind of envisioned to be a vagabond shoot, with the girls wearing sundresses and toting suitcases, and they were out on a dirt road. And in the process, when they were actually doing that, one of her friends, her name was Erin Levenhagen, was just standing there in her underwear with her hair blowing in the wind. And Tonya thought she looked so beautiful. And so she just snapped a few pictures of her. And the photos turned out so well that Tonya kind of realized that she wanted to take other photos like this, in which the subjects just looked natural and confident and completely at ease and beautiful. And so that's kind of how it started. And an interesting side note is that ultimately that first model, Erin, actually became an employee of Tonya's and is now kind of an integral part of the Beauty Marks photo team.
And you said there's sort of a natural self-confidence about all of this. What is sort of the emphasis that comes through, and what sort of emphasis does Beauty Marks place on their photographs with their subjects?
Yeah, well, they don't seem to think of them as kind of like naughty or racy pictures, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think boudoir photography sort of had more of that reputation at one time. Like they were kind of these sexy photos that you took for your significant other. But Beauty Marks is kind of like a lot of the new boudoir photographers, in that they view it more as kind of a self-celebration, body positivity, that sort of thing. They really emphasize that you don't have to fit into this certain narrow definition of beauty in order to sit for a boudoir session. They really want to see everybody represented in their photos. And so they make it clear that this is really for people of all backgrounds, body sizes, and even genders.
And so what does a typical session kind of look like? How does Tonya make people comfortable? Because I imagine there are a lot of first-time visitors or patrons that maybe need to get a little comfortable with this concept.
Yeah, I mean, we are Midwestern after all. So, I don't know how many people would be totally comfortable with wearing sexy lingerie in front of a camera if that's not something you do all the time. So they actually spend a lot of time beforehand preparing their photo subjects. They find out exactly what their subjects, and they like to call them guests, want to achieve with the photo shoot. Plus, they spend a lot of time beforehand collaborating with them on things like wardrobe and just getting to know the person and trying to find a style that would suit that person. Tonya described it almost like a BFF vibe, so that, the guests really do feel comfortable, like they're working with a team who really wants to present them in their best light. And so by the time that person comes in for a photo shoot, they've usually had at least 2 previous interactions with them. They've talked extensively about wardrobe and what they want to achieve. And so they know what to expect. And it's not like they just showed up one day and suddenly had to put on lingerie and take great photos.
And part of the setting the comfort level, so to speak, is that she actually had to find her own studio. This was an interesting bit in your story, that they were sort of sharing a space with someone else, which meant people kind of going by in robes back and forth through shared hallways. But
Yeah.
now she's kind of upgraded from that setup, correct?
Yes. Yeah. She said, she started out kind of renting space in a studio that was shared by several photographers. And she said it was really inconvenient. It was like she had to take all her stuff with her when she was done. She couldn't really post examples of her photos to help sort of advertise what she could do. And then, just as you mentioned, probably the most uncomfortable thing was that sometimes people had to like put on a robe and walk down a hallway past offices where people were working to go into restrooms and change or do whatever. And so it just was not very conducive to a comfortable photo shoot. And so she got to the point where she was successful enough, and now she has her own photo studio in South Moorhead. So she has all the tools there that she needs to take great boudoir photos. Like they have a clawfoot tub and all kinds of cool furnishing and this very elaborate bed with a very fancy headboard. And so she has this great backdrop now for taking photos.
And another interesting takeaway from this story, this is sort of maybe a little behind the curtain for us, is we sometimes report on certain stories and we feel like we can expect certain responses from readers. And I know that we spent a lot of time reviewing the photos in this story just to make sure that everything was, palatable for most. And we thought that this story might draw a little negativity. We all know what social media is like, but that didn't happen at all. Now, do you have any theories as to why that didn't happen? I'm guessing it has something to do with sort of the positive message of the story, but what do you think?
I think so too. I agree. I mean, and of course, that doesn't mean we won't hear something negative, we still could. But so far, I don't know if readers were so busy recuperating from Thanksgiving weekend that they didn't notice this story, but it actually was a well-read story. So, it's likely people did see it. I think a lot of it was how she approached the topic. She really emphasized the positive aims of these photo sessions, talked a lot about self-acceptance, body positivity. It wasn't about simply taking sexy photos. And she also made it very clear that there isn't anything wrong with taking sexy photos. She talked about like the old masters who did these paintings that showed nude women and they were strong and they were beautiful. And she thought that was very commendable. But for her, it was about more than a pretty picture. A lot of times these photo shoots turned out to have these amazing stories behind them. And she talked about, like, for instance, they would have the photos taken before, during, and after their breast cancer surgeries or treatment. In some cases, the photo sessions were almost like a call of independence for someone who had been in an abusive relationship where maybe she was called fat and body shamed all the time. And so it was definitely more of a statement of empowerment, really, and of personal self-expression than one might initially assume when you're thinking of boudoir photos.
And what kind of preconceived ideas did you have about boudoir photography before you went in and did this story? And in meeting with Beauty Marks and Tonya and hearing about what she has to do, what was sort of your takeaway from reporting on this story?
Well, I have to admit that I did have some preconceived notions. I maybe even thought boudoir photography seemed, if I dare say it, a little silly, maybe a little self-serving. But 5 minutes into the interview with Tonya, I just felt like that completely changed my mind. She spoke so eloquently about why she was doing this and so admiringly of the women who were doing this. And you could tell that she really was sincere in trying to capture the beauty of men and women, and to do it in a respectful way and to help them feel empowered and strong and beautiful. And so at that point, I really realized this is a lot more about people's stories or people's journeys. And this is how they chose to express themselves at some point in their journey. And so, yeah, it definitely changed my mind. And I had a lot of admiration for both Tonya and for the people who stand in front of the camera.
And it was a really positive message overall. And Tammy, we were so happy to have you deliver it for us. So for those of you who haven't yet read this story, I would highly recommend doing so. It's available on inforum.com/business. And Tammy, once again, thank you so much for giving us this story and spending a little time here to tell us, peel back some of the layers on it, tell us about the background.
My pleasure. Thanks, Thomas.
That does it for this week's episode of the Inforum Business Beat podcast. As always, this has been your host, Thomas Evanella. Join me again next week, but visit inforum.com/business to stay up to date in the meantime.